Congrats, Evan, I said, pushing the words out through a smile that felt like chewing on glass. I'm Mark. 44. And I just watched 5 solid years of sweat and late nights get handed to a 23-year-old kid who'd been at Ravens Park Ventures for, wait for it, 3 months. Evan was grinning like he'd just conquered Everest. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and quiet defeat. Everyone clapped. I clapped too, because that's what you do. My manager, Leonard Whitaker, stood at the head of the table, chest puffed out like he just won a county fair rooster contest. Evan's going to do great things as our new regional operations director, he announced. Yeah. The very same job I'd been prepping for since 2019. The one they told me I'd get once old man Caldwell retired. I kept my hands neatly folded, my face calm. But inside, something icy was forming. Right where hope used to live. Evan was Leonard's nephew. Everybody knew it. Nobody dared mention it. The kid had a shiny business degree that still smelled like printer ink and the kind of confidence you only get when life's never made you earn it. For 3 months, he'd shadowed me, watched me handle vendor contracts, fix supply chain tangles, and troubleshoot busted equipment across 4 states. Now, somehow, he was my boss. Mark's been a huge help getting Evan up to speed, Leonard added, like that was supposed to make me feel better. 5 years of perfect reviews and 60-hour weeks, and apparently all of it had just been a long, unpaid internship for somebody else's golden boy. I gave a little nod. Happy to help, I said. Meeting over. People lined up to shake Evan's hand, slapping him on the back like he'd earned his stripes. I took my time gathering my notepad and pen. My head felt crystal clear. Like that weird moment at 3 a.m. when you wake up and suddenly solve a problem that's been chewing at you for months. I was almost at the door when Leonard caught my arm. Mark, hang back a second. The room emptied, leaving just the 2 of us. He loosened his tie, trying for a sympathetic look. I know this might be a surprise, but Evan's bringing fresh perspectives, new energy. Sure, I said flatly. You understand, right? Nothing personal. I looked at him for a long moment. 52, soft around the middle, thinning hair combed carefully to hide the bald spots. He'd gotten his own job when his father-in-law stepped down. The irony was impossible to ignore. I understand perfectly, I said. He exhaled, relieved. Good. I knew you'd be professional about it. That's why you're such a valuable team member. Valuable. Just not valuable enough for the promotion I'd earned. But valuable enough to train his nephew and fake a smile while doing it. I walked back to my desk, sat down. The office hummed with business as usual, phones ringing, keyboards rattling, people solving other people's problems. I opened my laptop and stared at the blank screen for a full minute before I started typing. I joined Ravens Park Ventures in March 2019, right after my divorce was finalized. I needed a clean slate, and manufacturing logistics felt like something steady I could actually build on. The company dealt in industrial equipment distribution across the Southwest. Not glamorous, but it paid well and let me sleep without worrying about the lights staying on. Leonard had hired me himself, shook my hand, told me they needed someone with my experience. I'd spent 12 years at my last job before budget cuts wiped me out. At 44, starting over wasn't exactly thrilling, but Leonard made it sound promising. We're growing fast, he told me during my interview. Plenty of room for advancement for the right people. So I became the right people. I worked weekends when shipments stalled. Stayed late when customers panicked. Built a web of supplier relationships from Phoenix clear to Houston. My performance reviews? Spotless. Leonard always smiled, always dangled that carrot. Your management material, Mark. Just need to be patient. Patient. Yeah, I was good at patient. My daughter, Lily, visited every other weekend. 16 now, old enough to spot when her dad looked worn out. Some Sunday morning she'd find me hunched over the kitchen table, laptop open, answering work emails. "Dad, it's the weekend," she'd remind me. "Just catching up," I'd say. "Building something here." She'd roll her eyes, but she got it. Her mom had remarried a lawyer who worked normal hours and coached Little League. I was the dad who worked too much, but always sent birthday money on time and never missed a school play. The first crack showed up 6 months ago when Leonard casually mentioned his nephew might be joining the company. "Smart kid," he said. "Fresh out of the University of Texas. Business degree." I nodded, thinking nothing of it. Happens all the time. Companies bring in grads, start them at the bottom, let them learn the ropes. Except Evan didn't start at the bottom. He landed in the office right next to Leonard's, with a title, Operations Specialist, and a paycheck I could only guess at. Leonard paraded him around like royalty. "Evan's going to observe how we do things," he told the team. Observation, in this case, meant sitting in on my client calls, scribbling notes while I explained contract negotiations. Asking basic questions that proved he didn't yet grasp what we actually did. Still, he was polite. Eager. "Yes, sir, and thank you," rolled off his tongue, like his mom had drilled manners into him. I trained him because that's what you do for the new guy, even when the new guy's last name is Whitaker and his uncle signs your checks. Even when you start to suspect you already know how this story ends. The moment I knew for sure came 3 weeks ago, thanks to a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd stayed late, trying to wrap up quarterly reports. The place was empty except for the cleaning crew. On my way to grab coffee from the break room, I heard voices from Leonard's office. Door cracked just enough, and the hallway carried sound better than anyone realized. "The board's going to have questions," Leonard was saying. "Evan's only been here 2 months." Another voice, deeper, older. Sounded like Robert Gaines from corporate. "You said Mark was ready for promotion." "Mark's dependable," Leonard said, "but Evan's family. Plus, he's got the degree. The board loves degrees." "What about Mark's experience?" the other man asked. Leonard chuckled, not in a cruel way, but it didn't exactly drip with kindness either. "Mark's solid. Reliable. But he's not executive material. He'll keep doing his thing, earn a good paycheck, and everyone's happy." I stood there in that hallway for half a minute, letting their words sink in while they casually mapped out my future. Evan would take Caldwell's job. I'd train him, keep him afloat, and smile like I was grateful for the privilege. "Mark's not going to cause trouble," Leonard added. "He's got a kid. Alimony. He needs this job. He'll toe the line." That was when I turned and walked away, quietly, so they wouldn't hear me. Back at my desk, I saved my work, packed up, and headed for my car. I drove home in silence, not a single song or radio ad breaking through the noise in my head. That night, sleep wouldn't come. My mind kept replaying Leonard's words, "He'll fall in line." Like I was some old workhorse getting broken in for a saddle. Like 5 years of loyalty and performance had earned me scraps. I thought about Lily, how proud she'd been when I told her there might be a promotion coming. "My dad's going to be a director," she'd told her friends. Now I'd have to tell her that wasn't happening. I thought about my ex-wife, too, about the night she told me I was too passive. "You let people walk all over you, Mark. Stand up for yourself for once." Maybe she hadn't been wrong. The next morning, I walked into the office with a different frame of mind. I started paying more attention to Evan, how Leonard pulled him into every executive meeting while I was left to handle the day-to-day grind. How other managers slowly started taking their cues from him on decisions that used to land on my desk. 3 weeks later, there I was in that conference room, watching Evan soak up congratulations for a job he hadn't earned, and something inside me snapped, not with rage or sadness, but with perfect, sharp-edged clarity. Leonard thought I needed this job. Thought I'd stay in line because I had bills and a kid to support. He was wrong. I opened my laptop and began typing my resignation letter. My hands didn't shake. My mind didn't wander. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what I was going to do. At exactly 4:30 p.m. that Friday, I printed the letter. Leonard had just gotten back from strutting Evan around the warehouse like he was introducing a new king to his kingdom. I knocked on his door, stepped inside, and handed him the envelope. "This is my 2 weeks' notice," I said. Leonard's face flickered through confusion, disbelief, and something close to panic. He ripped the envelope open and scanned the page, his eyes darting back and forth. "Is this a joke?" "No, sir. You can't be serious. You're quitting because Evan got the promotion?" I didn't answer. I let the silence work for me. Leonard started pacing. "Mark, let's be rational. I get that you're upset, but walking away from 5 years of building your career? That's not smart." "I've made my decision," I said. "What about your daughter? Your responsibilities?" There it was, the pressure point he thought he could lean on. The reason he assumed I'd roll over. "I'll manage," I told him. His tone hardened. "You realize how this looks, right? Quitting because you didn't get the job, it's childish. Unprofessional. I can see how you'd think that," I said evenly. "I won't give you a good reference. You understand? You're leaving us in a bind. No company's going to hire someone who throws tantrums." Something cold and heavy settled in my gut. 5 years of staying late, covering weekends, fixing other people's messes, and now I was being called a child throwing a tantrum. "That's your choice," I said. Leonard tried softening again. "Look, Mark, you're good at what you do, but Evan brings youth, fresh ideas, vision." "Vision," I repeated, tasting the word. "The board wants innovation, new thinking. Evan's the future of this company. And what am I?" I asked. Leonard hesitated. "Experience. Stability. That's valuable too. Valuable enough to train his replacement, but not valuable enough to get the job myself." "I appreciate the clarification," I said. "Don't do this, Mark. Take the weekend. Think about it. Come back Monday and we'll act like this never happened." I studied him. He honestly believed that dangling my reference and questioning my professionalism would scare me into staying. "I'll finish my 2 weeks," I said. "I'll train Evan on anything he needs to know." Leonard's face tightened. "You think Evan needs training from someone who quits when things get tough? He's going to need to know the vendor contracts, the logistics, the emergency procedures," I said. "Unless you plan to figure that out yourself." That one landed. Leonard knew he didn't understand the technical side of operations, and neither did Evan. They needed me, at least until my last day. "Fine. 2 weeks," Leonard said stiffly. "But don't expect any favors. You're burning bridges." I nodded and turned for the door. "Mark," he called after me. "You're making a big mistake." "Maybe," I said. "But it's mine to make." Back at my desk, I felt lighter than I had in months. The office was already emptying for the weekend. Evan was still at his computer, poring over organizational charts like they held the meaning of life. I opened my laptop and began creating a full handover, vendor lists, emergency protocols, troubleshooting notes. Not because Leonard deserved it, but because the people depending on those supply chains didn't deserve chaos. My phone buzzed. A text from Lily. "Dad, can we get dinner tomorrow? I want to hear about your week." I smiled. "Absolutely. I've got news to share. Good news, for once. News worth sharing with Lily, not the kind that came from climbing a company ladder, but from finally standing up for myself." walking away from people who couldn't see the value I brought to the table. Leonard thought he was punishing me. Thought that by dangling my reference over my head, I'd be grateful for the privilege of staying. He had no clue what he just set in motion. Monday morning hit with an unexpected twist. I showed up early, same as always, and found Evan already at his desk looking like he'd been dropped into deep water without a life vest. 3 monitors lit up with messy spreadsheets, and he was scribbling notes from vendor emails like he was trying to copy an alien language. "Morning, Evan," I said. "How's the transition going?" His head snapped up, relief washing over him. "Mark, thank God. I've been here since 6 trying to figure out the Ellison Industries account. Their procurement manager is threatening to cancel our contract if we don't fix some shipping issue by noon. Ellison Industries, our biggest client. $2 million a year in heavy machinery component orders. I'd been running that account personally for 4 years. What's the problem?" I asked. "Something about delayed titanium brackets from a supplier in Tucson," he said. "But I can't figure out which supplier, they've got so many, and the emails are all over the place." I glanced at his screen. He had Ellison's email open, but the supplier contracts he was scrolling through weren't even related to titanium brackets. The kid was drowning. "Evan," I asked carefully, "did Leonard walk you through the Ellison account?" "He said you'd handle the transition," Evan said. "But then he mentioned your situation, and I figured maybe I should take the initiative and figure it out myself." My situation. That's what they were calling it now. I spent the next 3 hours pulling him out of the quicksand. I explained Ellison's just-in-time delivery requirements, walked him through the backup supplier network I'd built over the years, and showed him why a single shipping hiccup could spiral into a contract loss. "This is incredibly complex," Evan said once we resolved the crisis. "How do you keep all of this straight?" "Experience," I told him. "And good documentation." "Could you show me your system?" he asked. That's when it hit me. Leonard hadn't just promoted Evan without grooming him for the role. He'd done it without even understanding what the job demanded. Evan wasn't a fool, but he was completely out of his depth. At lunch, I started making calls to my network. Word travels fast in industrial logistics, and the buzz about changes at Ravens Park was already making the rounds. Some people were worried about continuity, others smelled opportunity. Karen Ellison, yes, that Ellison, called me directly. "Mark, I'm hearing rumors about management changes. Please tell me you're still handling our account." "For the next 2 weeks," I said. "After that, Evan Whitaker will be your main contact." Silence. Then, Whitaker, as in Leonard Whitaker. "His nephew?" "That's right." "Jesus, Mark. That kid called me this morning asking questions that made no sense. I thought he was new, not replacing you." "He's eager to learn," I said. "I don't have time to train your management team. If Ravens Park can't provide competent service, we'll find someone who can." That same conversation played out with 4 different key clients before the day ended. By quitting time, I could see exactly where this was heading. Evan would sink, clients would bail, Leonard would panic, and the regional division would bleed business until it collapsed. 6 months, maybe less. But none of that was my problem anymore. Tuesday morning, Leonard summoned me to his office. He looked worn down, dark circles under his eyes. "Mark, I've been thinking about our talk on Friday. Maybe we were too quick to make a decision. I think there's room for both you and Evan in management." "Meaning?" I asked. "You could be associate director. Evan's second in command. You'd handle the technical side, he'd focus on strategy. Associate director, corporate code for do the same work for the same money and pretend the other guy is your boss." "That's generous," I said, "but I'll stick with my original decision." His jaw tightened. "You're going to regret this, Mark. I promise you that." "Maybe. But I was done letting Leonard's promises dictate my life. By Wednesday, I had 3 interviews on the calendar and a plan that went beyond just walking away. I'd spent 5 years building a web of relationships across the Southwest supply chain. Those relationships belonged to me, not Ravens Park. Thursday morning, I walked into my first interview, Silverlink Energy, a renewable equipment distributor in Austin. Their regional manager, Thomas Keaton, had been trying to recruit me for 2 years. "Mark," he said, shaking my hand, "I heard you might be on the market." Word travels fast. "It does when good people are available," I said. "Especially people with your client base," he replied. Thomas slid an offer across the desk, Regional Operations Director, the exact title Leonard had given to Evan, plus 30% more pay, better benefits, and one key condition: bring my client network with me. "We've been trying to break into the heavy machinery component market," Thomas explained. "Your connections with Ellison Industries, Redstone Manufacturing, and Border States Equipment would be invaluable. Nothing shady about it. Clients follow the people they trust, and I hadn't signed a non-compete. My accounts were free to choose their supplier. I'll need to give Ravens Park 2 weeks," I said. "Of course," Thomas replied. Professional courtesy. Thomas had said he suspected Ravens Park might cut me loose early once they realized what was happening, and he wasn't wrong. That Friday afternoon, Leonard called me into his office. Evan sat in the corner, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Word about my Thursday interview had clearly traveled faster than the morning coffee run. "I hear you've been talking to competitors," Leonard said. "I'm exploring opportunities. While you're still employed here? While you're training Evan?" "That's a conflict of interest," he shot back. I didn't say a word. "It's also corporate espionage," he continued. "Sharing proprietary information with competitors." "I haven't shared any proprietary information." "Your client relationships are proprietary," Leonard said, his face flushing red. "My client relationships are personal," I told him. "I built them over 5 years of delivering results. They belong to Ravens Park Ventures," Leonard barked. "If you take them with you, we'll sue you for everything you've got." From the corner, Evan started to speak. "Uncle Leonard, maybe we should." "Shut up, Evan," Leonard snapped without looking at him. Then, "Back to me, Mark, you walk out of here and try to steal our clients, I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." I stood slowly. "Leonard, I've given you 5 years, perfect reviews, 60-hour weeks. I trained your nephew for the job you promised me. I've been nothing but professional through this entire mess. And now you're threatening me? I'm going to finish my 2 weeks and move on. What happens after that depends entirely on how you handle the transition." He leaned back, eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." At the door, I turned to Evan. "If you need help next week, just ask. Despite what your uncle thinks, I want you to succeed." Evan gave a quick, grateful nod. Leonard's glare could have cut glass. My final week was spent building a complete handover for Evan, not for Leonard's sake, but because Evan was 23, in way over his head, and didn't deserve to drown. On my last day, I cleared my desk, said my goodbyes, and handed Leonard my badge. "This isn't over," he said. "For me, it is," I replied. Walking out of Ravens Park felt like shedding a heavy coat I'd been wearing for years. The real payoff came 6 months later, though not in the way I'd imagined. I was deep into my new role at Silverlink Energy when Thomas Keaton called me into his office, grinning like he'd just heard the best joke of his life. "Mark, you've got to see this," he said, sliding a business magazine across the desk. The headline read, "Ravens Park Ventures Regional Division Hemorrhages Clients, Family Drama Blame." The article laid it all out, for major accounts lost in 5 months, including Ellison Industries and Redstone Manufacturing. Southwest regional revenue down 60%. The board launching an investigation into management practices. Leonard Whitaker was terminated last week, Thomas said. Turns out the board learned Evan had been hired without proper qualifications. They're calling it a nepotism investigation. I kept reading. Evan had resigned after 3 months of drowning in accounts he couldn't manage. He'd gone back to grad school. Meanwhile, Leonard was facing a lawsuit from Ellison Industries over a supply chain failure that had cost them $2 million. Here's the fun part, Thomas added. 3 of their remaining clients have already reached out to us, specifically asking for you. The piece also mentioned that several former Ravens Park employees had jumped to competitors, taking their expertise with them. No names were listed, but I knew the pattern. What goes around comes around, Thomas said. Leonard took you for granted for 5 years. Now he's unemployed, and you're running our Southwest division. I handed the magazine back. I feel bad for Evan. The kid was set up to fail. Evan will be fine, he's young. Leonard? Different story. A year later, passing through Tucson on a business trip, I stopped for lunch at a small diner near the airport. There in a corner booth sat Evan, nose buried in a textbook. Mark, he said, surprised. What are you doing here? Business trip. Mind if I join you? He waved me into the seat. The book on the table read Industrial Supply Chain Management. Back in school? I asked. Master's program at Arizona State, he said with a rueful smile. Figured I should actually learn what I was supposed to be doing. That's smart, I said. I wanted to thank you, he told me. For how you handled everything. You could have hung me out to dry, but you didn't. You tried to help me succeed. You were in an impossible spot, I said. Uncle Leonard still blames you for everything. Says you sabotaged the company. I sipped my coffee. What do you think? Evan shut his book. I think I was 23 with a shiny business degree and 0 real-world experience. I think Uncle Leonard gave me a job I wasn't ready for because I was family. And I think you spent 5 years earning a promotion that should have been yours. We sat in silence for a moment. I'm sorry for how it all went down, he said. You deserved better. We both did, I replied. But sometimes things work out the way they're supposed to. He nodded. I hear you're doing well at Silver Lake. I am. And you'll do fine too, once you've got the foundation. I paid for lunch and shook his hand before leaving. Evan was a good kid, just a pawn in his uncle's game. 6 months later, I heard Leonard had filed for bankruptcy after losing his wrongful termination suit against Ravens Park's board. Evan, meanwhile, had graduated with honors and taken an entry-level logistics job in Phoenix, learning the business the right way. The nephew had figured out what the uncle never did: respect and advancement aren't inherited, they're earned. And sometimes, the best revenge is just walking away and building something better.